So hello everyone, welcome to the state of Livepeer. I hope everybody had a fantastic lunch and that you're all pumped up for our conversation today. My name is Mihai Grigore. I'm a senior analyst with Messari. At Messari, I focus on Web3 infrastructure projects with a focus on decentralized data storage, decentralized data indexing, and also decentralized live streaming. And this is also the topic of today. We have Livepeer co-founder with us, Doug Petkanics, and also my colleague at Messari, Stephanie Dunbar. Stephanie, would you like to introduce yourself? And then we move on to Doug.
Yeah, sure. I'm Stephanie. I'm also an analyst at Messari. I focus on asset due diligence as well as Web3 infrastructure and blockchain infrastructure. And yeah, really happy to be here. We've been covering Livepeer for the last 2-3 quarters. So yeah, pleasure to be here with you, Doug.
Yeah, thanks, Stephanie, and thanks, Mihai. Thanks, everyone, for coming and having me here. Doug Petkanics, founder of Livepeer, which is a video platform for Web3. And it's a token-coordinated network run by node operators around the world that coordinate on the Livepeer token. It's been live on Ethereum since 2018, and we migrated to Arbitrum earlier this year for scaling reasons. And excited to talk about some of the things people build using Livepeer, the applications we power, and what's coming up next.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Doug. Perhaps for our very, very diverse audience, would you like to give us a quick primer on how Livepeer works?
Sure. So first of all, the people that are using Livepeer are using Livepeer to power video streaming in their applications. So they're building applications that look like YouTube or look like Twitch, and they use Livepeer's network in order to power all the complex video aspects to make video work over the internet. So how does that work? People can run a Livepeer node, and the people that do this are people who have excess video encoding capacity, excess compute capacity, excess bandwidth. And they put this node on the Livepeer network in order to earn money for encoding and distributing video. And so what they do is they stake Livepeer token, they run a Livepeer node, and then the users of this network run kind of a different kind of node, a broadcast node, and they can send video into this network and pay digital payments to the network in order to power the video encoding and the streaming kind of out to the users. And at a super high level, that's how it works. We have all sorts of other roles in the network for token holders who can stake and delegate and earn a portion of these fees that users are earning. And all of these are also incentivized by the Livepeer token, which coordinates the network. So all these people who are running the network are actually owners in it, and they're receiving kind of rewards for doing work that helps the network.
Livepeer's been around for quite a while. One of the first Web3 infrastructure protocols that we've seen. What motivated you to found Livepeer? What problems are you trying to solve that you saw were not taken care of beforehand?
Sure thing. I think there's 2 parts to this origin story of Livepeer. The first part's sort of the entrepreneurial journey, where I've worked with the same co-founder, Eric Tang, on 2 startups previously, and the first one worked out great and had a great outcome, and the second one, what we were doing was right and happened, except we didn't get to be a part of it because we had been building and relying on big tech platforms like Facebook, Google, Twitter, and Pinterest for our distribution and our kind of distributing our users' content. And they all changed their APIs. They closed off our access. They built relationships direct with our users and kind of cut us out of the equation. And we said, never again do we want to be beholden on these gatekeepers and these closed platforms, and we only want to build on open ecosystems, open platforms where we can control our own destiny. So that led us in 2016 to this kind of emerging new open platform called Ethereum. And Ethereum was really exciting to us for 2 reasons. One was open development platform, as I mentioned. The second was it let you actually embed economic incentives into open source software in a way that lets people kind of are incentivized to contribute to that software, to run that software, to form networks, and that they can actually earn money and participate in the economics as those networks grow. And that was just like a mind-blowing superpower to us as a couple of hackers. And so we were all in on Ethereum and what would become Web3. The video side of the story relates to kind of our experience doing a lot of video engineering, feeling the pain of how expensive it was, how you could only really use Amazon and Google if you want to scale a video application because there were no other infrastructure providers that could kind of scale on demand for you. And we saw people in the Web3 space building, open payment systems, open identity systems, open storage systems, but there was no video or real-time streaming layer. We knew video is 80% of the traffic on the internet. It's the most popular form of media consumed. It's super empowering to what it can enable for the world. It's how we communicate, learn, are entertained. And so we saw the opportunity to build the video layer for Web3 is also really exciting.
Fantastic. So at Messari, we look a lot at whether protocols are useful and used. And as a matter of fact, we use Huddle01, which is an app built on top of Livepeer for the community calls that we have together with Doug. And the question for you is, besides Huddle01, what are other large users of Filecoin?
Of Livepeer.
Of Livepeer, sorry.
Yeah, good question. So that's one of the things we love about working on Livepeer is, using video infrastructure it's a practical, real problem. It's not some made up speculative, like digital currency only problem. And so there's a huge $70 billion a year video market that can leverage Livepeer. And you mentioned Huddle01. We think of that as the Web3 Zoom, an application built by a completely independent company out of India that uses Livepeer to power live streaming in their app and is growing and powers communications for DAOs and projects. So that's exciting. But a lot of the apps that we see also just power kind of traditional communities that have nothing to do with Web3. So an artist streaming community and platform called Picardo streams millions of minutes per week of video into the platform. And believe it or not, there are artists who have fans that hang out with them in a chat room and make requests and watch them draw digital art. And it's a huge community, right? And then you see all these really exciting kind of media use cases like the Lot Radio, which is based here in Brooklyn, has 24/7 live stream going over the courtyard, and that's outside of their Brooklyn broadcast location that has a brewery in it. And you see everything that's happening there and all the entertaining content they're streaming. But I'm really excited about, I think, the new emerging Web3 use cases that we are seeing people experiment with and seeing people begin to launch. And a lot of this has to do with how creators can better distribute their content, better monetize their content, direct with their fans without being kind of beholden to Google and Amazon, who own YouTube and Twitch, the platforms that they're kind of forced into using and agreeing to their terms of service today.
On that note, you released a blog post a couple of days ago, talking about some of these next-gen apps, and you're talking about how they'll be, Web3 focused and have a lot of different features that you're not going to see in like a traditional, let's say, content creation or social app. Do you want to go into some of the details about, some of the special, things that can be built on top of these networks that obviously include Livepeer, but other Web3 native functionalities?
Yeah, so I think obviously the state of Web3 application development is pretty early right now. And a lot of what we've seen when it comes to people trying to build a killer Web3 social app is what you could describe as like a clone of a Web2 app, right? Like, can I put all the technical pieces together to make something like Twitter or something like Twitch or something like YouTube? And the answer is, yes, you can. And we're seeing lots of people who have tried. But I don't think that alone, I don't think just because you used Livepeer and Filecoin and Ethereum to build a Web3 YouTube, I don't think that's compelling enough. That's not going to attract, billions of users like some of those platforms have surpassed alone. I think the breakthrough Web3 application is going to be something different and something that's better for all those users because it takes advantage of what blockchain and Web3 uniquely enables. And so what does blockchain and Web3 uniquely enable? Like what have we seen so far that works and that's been successful? And I think there's been really like 4 big clear success stories. There's like instant global capital formation. There's permissionless access to an alternative financial system. There's digital asset ownership. And there's collective global coordination. And so those are complex terms. What are the acronyms for those things? They're ICOs, DeFi, NFTs, and DAOs, right? And I think the breakthrough kind of social applications are not just going to be YouTube or just going to be Twitch clones, but they're going to be something that takes advantage of the fact that you can create content and globally crowdfund for it, or you can distribute it as ownable assets to your users who then get some advantage for owning it through the NFT movement. And so you have to take advantage of these primitives and combine it with the benefits of open infrastructure like cost effectiveness and data portability and whatnot, and put those pieces together to really create a killer application. And I think we're going to see a lot of experimentation in the coming year and see some of these breakout apps.
I think you make a great point with respect to value creation for the end user. What we're also thinking is, how do you believe that these apps are going to be able to capture actually that value, and that they are going to be functioning sustainably, over longer periods of time?
Yeah, good question. So how would an app capture value? I think you can look at this in two parts. I think the first part is actually asking, what does it mean for a user-owned community or a user-owned application to have a sustainable model, right? And I don't know if the goal is always for a company to form and launch an app and figure out how it immediately generates traditional revenue. I think it's about thinking, how do I distribute ownership of this so that the users who are contributing value to the application, the content creators, the consumers, the moderators and curators, how are they becoming owners in this? And if they're owners in it, how are they incentivized to make it better, right? And so how do you create this network effect where everyone is working to make, let's call it the Web3 Twitch, to make that the best experience possible for all parties involved? And if you've accomplished that, if that's growing, if it's adding users, if it's growing in attention, then clearly that is valuable and can be monetized and capture value. And that gets into part two, which is does it have to be advertising, right? I hate the advertising attention economy model that we see in traditional Web2 social today. It's actually caused a lot of the harm with our civilization lately, the fake news incentives and just trying to be in control of who sees what content. I think you can look at better models. You can look at distributing kind of ownership of digital first assets and experiences in exchange for value. So people want to exchange value in order to be part of the experience of a creator, writing and distributing a song, or playing a concert, or distributing a piece of digital art. So you see people exchanging values for interactive experiences, for owning digital assets, and that's a different model than just advertising. And if that that value can flow to the creators, but also to the platforms and the owners of the platforms who own the tokens, who worked on it and made it great, I think that's disruptive and that's powerful.
How do you see these apps, imagine a decentralized YouTube, availability, who sees what? I think in your post, you were talking about how right now, there's these kind of algorithms kind of feed into themselves, and you kind of go down these rabbit holes and kind of get stuck. You're kind of shown what they think you want, but how can we kind of distribute that and, make it more fair and, grow in different ways than are already seeing in the industry?
Yeah, this is the moderation and curation question. I think it's something that a lot of builders in crypto and Web3 don't think about up front as part of the design process. They think about after they've built something and it's a little too late. How are we going to get great content on here? And how are we going to make sure we don't have harmful content on here and whatnot? And I think, when you look at again, big tech social right now, Facebook and YouTube, they have a really tough position when it comes to content curation and moderation, because they have so many users with so many different ideals and values that you can't possibly satisfy all of them through one curation policy, right? You can't. They talk about what should be moderated, what should be allowed, what should be censored. How do you determine what's fake news? How do you determine what's acceptable to put to someone with one belief system? And there's no one algorithm or one curation policy that can solve that. And I don't think Web3 can necessarily solve that if it's trying to build a monolithic mega application either. What I think you can do in Web3 is you can incentivize communities to be part of the curation of content for that community's very specific value system and philosophy. And so that's where you will see basically like, almost think of them as like subreddits, right? Like each subreddit has its own value system, and therefore it can have its own moderation policy that matches the values of that community. And it probably can't actually grow to be too big. But what you can have is you can have a platform where you can have many of these different subreddits or sub-communities that all have kind of user incentivized curation and rewarded curation to kind of nail the experience for that user base itself.
So yeah, speaking of community and of subreddits, so Livepeer is thinking of introducing a DAO. What are the plans for that?
Yeah, Livepeer's had a long roadmap to decentralization, right? Like I think we've been live for 4.5 years and been working on it before that. And in many ways, you could consider it a DAO already, because from day one, the token was widely distributed via an open access mechanism and owned by everyone on the network. Unlike many projects or DAOs, Livepeer, the project, has no treasury, there's no holdback, there's no kind of centrally controlled unit of token to be distributed. And you know, that works to our weakness a little bit in the sense that like we can't help just pull on this infinite pool of token to incentivize builders, right? But it works to the advantage that everyone in the community actually is a true owner in the network. They know their stake, and they don't feel at the whim of anyone else. We've taken steps since then to further decentralize governance. So right now there's an open on-chain governance framework. It's kind of a coin-weighted, stake-weighted voting system, which may not be the best, but at least it's open and defined. And so community has the ability to make proposals, vote on them, enact upgrades, enact protocol changes. And there's some more steps on that roadmap. I think one of the biggest changes to maybe what you're referring to become a full DAO is how could that community actually take a governance action to solve for the kind of the lack of the treasury issue and be able to use funding to update incentives, update economics, to help round out and build the full side of the demand side of the ecosystem as well. And that would be something that I think needs to come from the community through the governance framework, and not something that can just be dropped on the project by the founder or a company that dedicates a lot of work to the network.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I know you also have a really active grants program. Just came to my mind, it could be like, someone brought forth in the community, hey, like, I need some, some funding to like research, how we can really like make this larger and have more contributors like work on, the protocol itself. But further on the grants program, I'd love to hear what you've been funding recently, and some of the things that are going on in the larger Livepeer ecosystem.
Yeah, so I'll speak kind of generally about grants programs and what I think they should be for, and then I could talk a little bit about like what we're seeing, right, and maybe how to reconcile this. I think it's an interesting challenge. So the purpose behind a grants program is that it can give grants to people who are contributing a common good to the whole ecosystem, right? Like you would think a recipient of a Livepeer grant should be building something or contributing value in the way that they can through marketing or awareness or communications that benefits all of the other collective token holders in the project, right? And we have given a lot of grants for those purposes, tools for orchestrators, monitoring and monitoring metrics tools, et cetera. But we actually see a lot of grant applicants who are building applications on Livepeer. So they want to create a great social media application or creator application, but they need a little funding to jumpstart their building. And so they apply for a grant. And that one's actually tricky because they, in a sense, they have their own self-interested business or project or DAO. And what they're doing would use the Livepeer network in a way that you would traditionally think a customer would use it. And they, when they build on the Livepeer network, they pay into the Livepeer network to use it. But it's a question, is what they're doing benefiting everyone in the ecosystem? Maybe in the early days, yes, because it's a great showcase application. But as there are lots of showcase applications or scaled users, do you want to actually use kind of common goods funding for that purpose? I think that's a tricky question. And the good thing is the grants are run by a community grants committee, and again, not a central decision maker. But I think that's a tricky one to grapple with, and there's no kind of clear-cut recipe for what the best way to leverage grants are.
Yeah, absolutely. With respect to the use cases that are built on top of Livepeer, we've seen very recently the debate that GPUs are not going to be needed anymore. However, they are needed for video transcoding, and Livepeer needs them. So the question is, what are other features that Livepeer can offer in order to be able to enable new use cases beyond video transcoding and live streaming?
Yeah, good question. For a little bit of background there, again, video encoding is something that Livepeer does. What that does is an HD video is captured of this event, but in order to actually deliver that video to everyone over the internet on slow connection speeds, on mobile phones, on smart TVs, you have to actually transcode that video into many different types of videos and bit rates so that you can deliver it reliably. And so that's what these GPUs that are on the Livepeer network can do. GPUs were also being used to mine cryptocurrencies. They still are, including the Ethereum network, up until 1 week ago when the Ethereum network switched to proof of stake and shut off GPU mining. And so all of these GPUs that are already out there have been paid for, they've been deployed, they've been distributed, they're in data centers and mining rigs, and they're now looking for alternative sources of income. So the Livepeer network video encoding is one great source of income for them. There's other capabilities related to video that these GPUs are great for. Anything that's AI related, so for example, trying to automatically detect whether a video is adult content or violent content or even copyrighted content is done with AI algorithms that run on GPUs. And those are really powerful tools for people building social applications. And so the Livepeer network already kind of has working code for doing the content detection and scene classification. And these other items are on our roadmap. I wouldn't say they're the highest priority, like you'll see them this quarter. They'll be more as per user need. So if someone needs them, come work with us and we can get something live. There's one other kind of outside of the box use case for these GPUs that's kind of come to the forefront recently that I think is really interesting. Has anyone here played around with these AI art generative text to art tools, DALL-E 2, Midjourney, Stable Diffusion? So cool, right? Like what these things are, you give a prompt, like a one-sentence prompt of text, or even an emoji prompt. You can give them emojis. And in a couple of minutes of GPU processing power, they will spit out the most realistic, amazing, creative artwork that you've seen that matches your prompt. And, you know, they've been doing this for years with like DALL-E Mini, and then they released DALL-E 2, and they're proprietary, and you can buy a license and stuff. But this really cool project called Stable Diffusion just got released, which is open source and free, and anyone can run it. And it's unleashed this explosion of creativity with developers automatically generating art, and now all of a sudden you can piece them together to make videos automatically and combine them with other algorithms. And it's amazing, and it's requiring so much GPU processing power. And if you have to go to Google Cloud or Amazon to rent those GPUs, it's really freaking expensive. Like, you know, up to hundreds of dollars a day, depending on how much you're using these. Whereas on Livepeer's open marketplace for these GPUs, you know, people charge 10 to 50 to 100x less than Amazon for video encoding. It'd be really exciting to see what they'd be willing to charge to do this GPU rendering, because to them, again, it's just additional revenue. And we already have some node operators experimenting with this in our chat room. I think it's really exciting, and you know, can expand the use cases of Livepeer to other forms of media.
That's really cool. I'm going to check that out later. It's really obvious that there's just so many things that can, you know, be done on the Livepeer network. You have this, you know, network of nodes that works already for transcoding and exploring with different things. What do you think, you know, where can Livepeer, the network, go in 5 years in terms of, you know, other additional services, video services it can offer, and, you know, anything with GPUs, you know, just looking really forward in the future?
Yeah, I think, you know, right now we're focused on kind of the simple table stakes and making it work really well for developers. So live streaming video or video on demand, which means you upload a video and then anyone can play it back later, right? Like a YouTube type feature set. And then the third would be, you know, being able to kind of mint your NFTs off of those assets, because those are kind of the core primitives of what developers are doing. there's a lot of components to it. The Livepeer network does the transcoding. Our software does a bunch of the ingestion and origin services and whatnot. But I think there's a huge opportunity for the Livepeer network to play a key role in content delivery, so peer-to-peer content delivery. That's, again, not relying on these few big content delivery network companies to deliver video to millions of people and take that load off and move it into the peers that are watching these videos. I think these other capabilities for video, as we were just mentioning, are really impactful. And then looking out even further, just if you look at what the Livepeer protocol is, it lets users of this network issue in a compute job, video encoding, issue a digital payment along with it, and it lets people who have that compute capacity perform that work and get paid to do it. That can be abstracted to any type of compute on any type of streaming data or input, and that's a really powerful primitive. So you start with the world's most popular media use case, video, where there's a huge market, and then as you kind of establish your fit and you've bootstrapped your whole network here, you have the opportunity to expand out from there, as opposed to some projects that start with, oh, we're going to be decentralized Amazon and use us for anything, but you have to build so much product and tooling to satisfy any one use case that it's hard to kind of get users to just come and build anything.
So we spoke about killer social media apps, but in the meantime, people still prefer to use centralized traditional social media apps. So my question for you is, what do you believe it will take people to switch to the new wave of decentralized social media apps that are going to be the killer apps in your view?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be a one-for-one switch. Like, there's not going to be a moment when Facebook violates your privacy and then all of a sudden everyone switches to the decentralized Facebook, because Facebook has literally violated your privacy like every single day for the last 20 years. I think it's going to be that there's going to be a new paradigm, just like the way TikTok was a new paradigm on top of YouTube or Snapchat that no one saw coming because it was a totally different format and a different type of media and whatnot. And I think this new paradigm will combine one of those kind of unique Web3 enabled primitives, the ability to monetize the content better, the ability to instantly raise capital, the ability to tie in some financial incentive. And that thing will catch on and will start to grow, and it'll become something that inevitably everyone switches over to, and it will become networked, and it will become the world's biggest social media platform as a result, rendering the old social media platforms less and less relevant, just like the way that MySpace or Friendster became less and less relevant as new paradigms kind of emerged that everyone flocked to. So I think it'll be more of a seamless migration that people don't even realize. And this experience will have to be so smooth, they don't know they're using Web3 or blockchain or any of these technical components, but it'll just be kind of a paradigm shifting update that it happens slowly and then all at once.
Do you see, any of these traditional social media, giants? You think that they're not going to be happy about that? How do you think that they, do they have is there any risk in them, trying to, shut any of these networks down or, do something that could potentially inhibit the transition to the Web3 future?
Good question. I mean, I think the good news is we know about the innovator's dilemma. We know that when they have Google has the world's greatest cash-generating machine in their attention economy advertising model. They can't just move fast and take risks and be disruptive to that. And there's plenty of room and space for innovation for others to come along and kind of eat their lunch when it comes to this disruption. I think the interesting part of that question is you said, will they exhibit competitive or maybe anti-competitive behaviors in order to try and prevent this? And I think we should all be vigilant about that, right? Like a lot of our access to information and the internet and communication and everything is actually controlled more than we think by the few big giant tech companies. And yes, we're lucky a lot of them are US-based and are ideologically aligned to preserve freedoms and whatnot, but we've seen how easily they bend over and comply to the demands of other governments that want to restrict freedoms and want to restrict competition and whatnot. And I don't think it's a stretch to see how that almost happened in certain circumstances here in the United States, and how that certainly could happen in the future. And so I think it's really important at the infrastructural level that these technologies exist to present alternatives and to push back against that. And yeah, when it comes to social media, maybe they'll try and defend their turf, but if good alternatives exist that are open and permissionless, I don't know how much sway they'll have.
Unfortunately, time flew by so fast. I would like to thank both of you for the fantastic conversation. And for our audience, we cover Livepeer on a quarterly basis. If you'd like to follow our research, go to messari.io/research or follow us on Twitter @MessariCrypto. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Doug.
And yeah, you can find Livepeer at livepeer.org or @Livepeer on Twitter as well. So check us out.